What is the Chinese dream? When President Xi Jinping sounded the clarion call in 2012, it was about country and nation.
实现中华民族的伟大复兴，就是中华民族最伟大的中国梦。
But to the ordinary Chinese, what are these dreams made of?
我梦想啊，城市的打工者在城市里面能够有尊严的生活。
梦想的是美好的，现实是残酷的。
In this series, journalist and writer Zhou Yijun travels across China to size up the shifting shape of this dream.
如果你总留恋在那种情况下，那种生活方式，那么我说咱们自己的整个社会都不会进步了。
我们小时候有的梦想，将来肯定会实现。
The American dream is about self-invention and the belief that hard work will lead to a better life. It's a catchphrase that is familiar and well-defined. But what of the Chinese dream? 10 years ago, journalist Peter Hessler wrote the book Country Driving, A Chinese Road Trip. He spent 12 years immersed in China, just when the country was in the thick of economic reforms. The book was one of the few Western works touching on the issues faced by ordinary Chinese. The in-depth observations made it a bestseller. It also made the Chinese people reflect on their changing society and country. Now, host Zhou Yijun will revisit the characters and towns that first appeared in Hessler's book. Following 4 unique routes in this country, she'll explore 4 issues most affected by China's development. The changes in the inner world of the Chinese.
但这种生活方式的改变，这是必须的。
The economic transformation.
我怎么的？我干好几十年了，怎么突然间就不让我干了呢？
The rich-poor divide.
几千块钱一年，您这钱够花吗？
不够花。
And finally, sustainable development.
我看您的诗里面把它比作是眼泪。
内心比较愧疚吧。
She hopes to get closer to the authentic version of the Chinese dream, in the hearts and minds of the ordinary people in her home country. The quest begins at the Great Wall, retracing the footsteps taken by Hessler more than a decade ago. From the East Coast to the western inland areas, the social changes have been staggering in the villages, towns, and cities along this route. How have the inner worlds of the people been changed by the economic development and the advent of social media?
您是在快手上有多少粉丝啊
？300多万。
我这个在微博上有20万粉丝，都不好意思跟你拼。
不敢了，
大名人。
And what do they really feel about the pursuit of the Chinese dream? Like Hessler, the Great Wall is the starting point for many people when it comes to understanding China. This is the place that connects ancient China with modern China. This was where the Chinese defended themselves against foreign invasion. It is also a symbol of China's long civilization and a window for the world to understand China. Here in Beijing, the capital of China, Jinkou is considered the most dangerous section of the Great Wall. Workers are currently carrying out the largest restoration project in its history.
漂亮啊！这个也得换，这个。
Cheng Yongmao has worked here for 15 years as the chief engineer in charge of the restoration project. His job is to restore parts of the wall that have been damaged by wars and natural disasters.
这个长长的它的坚固主要是靠这石垫。这个子石不坏，这墙就不会塌。
小人跟我们说，这是在干什么呀？
这是在归砌这个石条。这个是呢，原来的城墙是这个样子。
对。
因为这个基础不均匀的下沉，造成了向外呢倾斜塌方、歪闪塌方。这点呢是原来用塌方的基础里边清出来的石头 散到这个位置。
哦，
现在呢，就是要把这点石头，要对号的把它还回去。
Even though I grew up knowing about the Great Wall, I've never realized the construction techniques used today mirror those from several hundred years ago. Perhaps that's why the facade of the Great Wall remains unchanged, almost like a portal to the past.
我看到这个每一块砖，都特别的珍惜它，因为这是400年前老总留下的东西，特别特别珍贵。你假如说我这儿补了这一块砖，从我心理上，我对这块砖，我就印象就不是那么深。他年龄才1岁，那这都400岁了。
您可以讲是对这个长城的每一寸你都亲手经历过的。
对，
那您这个对长城，您个人的情感是什么？
长城呢是代表咱们中华民族一个象征，民族一个团结的象征，凝聚力的象征，力量的象征。老祖宗呢留下一块特别珍贵的一个宝贝，作为咱们后人呢，你也得珍惜它，要爱护它。 延长它的这个寿命，是吧？让它呢把这个历史的信息流传得更远，给后代呢留下一个更深的一个记忆。所以说这个从咱们的情感来讲，一定要守护它，保护好它。
In Country Driving, Hessler wrote about an interesting chapter in Chinese history. In the 1920s, the intellectuals of the time were keen to embrace modernization and Western thought. They considered an ambitious plan to transform the Great Wall into a highway connecting the coastal areas with the remote inland areas. This was to be their national rejuvenation project. Eventually, the plan to turn the Great Wall into a highway failed to take off, no doubt because the area it covered was too remote and too barren. In his journey along the Great Wall, Hessler was more concerned about the social upheavals and its impact on ordinary people. He worried about the desolate countryside, the left-behind children and the elderly, and what he saw as reckless development. From his point of view, the greatest disturbance in this country lies in the internal conflict of the individual. In a place not far from the Jiankou section of the Great Wall, a group of volunteers are hard at work.
现在就是只要有野长城的地方，然后就有这个长城专职保护员。
就像你们这样，
对，咱们这就是长城专职保护员。
Wei Ziqi is one of the protagonists in Country Driving. Back in 2002, Hessler stayed in his village, Sancha, and recorded the changes taking place in the Chinese countryside. Hessler wanted to observe life here up close, but at that time, the villagers found it hard to accept a foreigner in their midst. Wei Ziqi helped Hessler rent a room here, making him the first foreign resident in Sancha village.
这老房子，你有时候还回来吗？这个？
好长时间了，够1个多月了吧？还是上次找东西的时候，完了回了一次。哎呀，都没路了。
嚯，草都长得路都没有了哈。
啊。
Wei Ziqi is going back to the old house on top of the mountain to help his son, Wei Jia, gather his old award certificates.
成荒地了。
呵。
When Hessler came to the village, Wei Jia was the only child here, and he became one of the protagonists in his book. Hessler wrote about Wei Jia's childhood from the age of 5 to the time he entered primary school at age 12.
他这个英语很好，跟那时候就认识何伟有关系吗？
有关系。他从一上幼儿园开始，没上幼儿园之前，何伟来了之后就给他们买的那种外文。 小的那种什么书，小的图书，然后也一直教他，每次来都教他。
Hessler stayed in Sancha village for many years, and this is where he wrote Country Driving. But the old house has been abandoned for a long time now.
您老一辈也住在这儿，
对，
就是你们家在这儿住了多少年了
怎么也得有180年吧。
？180年了，100多年在这儿。
对，差不多。
哇，现在你们都要搬迁到下面去了，
对，
所有的村民都走了，
都下去。你看这个院子，这不都已经是
都空了，
都空了。
他们都愿意过去是吧？
肯定都愿意。现在住的都是楼房。
In the rapidly changing China, everyone needs to be mentally prepared to accept the lifestyle revolution. Like the rest of his neighbors, Wei Ziqi had to move from his ancestral home. Wei Ziqi's new home is at the foot of the mountain, built in the style of Western villas. Under the plan to build a new socialist countryside, the new houses were basically provided for them free of charge. Now, almost all of the villagers have moved away from agriculture and found work in the cities. Wei Ziqi has also stopped farming. He now works full-time as a member of the village committee.
你住一家，哎，这个久仰，大家都知道你的故事。
Wei Jia, whom Hessler described as an honest child in his book, is now a young man studying in a university in Shanghai. He has come home for the summer holidays.
随便坐吧。那塔后边，那不是还有一个，你再往前一点，有一个烽火台，最高的。
看见了啊！这是你小时候哈？
对。
这个就是何伟给你拍的照片。
对的。
你们2个一起去爬长城。
对，这是我第一次去长城拍的。因为我从小像是喜欢看书啊，这些，包括到现在有时候会自己去写一些东西，其实都是受他的影响这样。
我觉得特别有意思，就是在这个何伟这个书里面，他写您说，感觉您是不愿意往回看的，老是往前看，就想着将来能干一些什么，将来能挣什么钱。
但这种生活方式的改变，这是必须的。也就是说，这个流电嘛，只能说是针对物去流电。现在这个条件也是一个进步，这是必须的。如果你总留恋在那种情况下，那种生活方式，那么这个我说咱们这个自己的整个社会都不会进步了。
过去了就只是回忆了嘛，然后抬头毕竟还是要往前看的。对。
那你周围这些年轻人，就是离开这个农村去城市的多吗？
蛮多的其实。
你觉得像现在农村的面貌改善了，像你们这样搬了新房子，他们会愿意回来吗？对年轻人有吸引力吗？
我感觉可能对年轻人的吸引力不会特别大。
从02年接触，然后他在这儿就是将近待了10年，按他自己说也是变化也是特别大的。当然是这个是代表一个中国一个整体的一个发展速度。在05年左右，我们一起就聊天的时候，就是说中国的当时他就承认中国的发展要比美国快20年。
For thousands of years, the Great Wall has protected the empire, but also trapped the Chinese people within its walls. Now the Chinese people are facing the outside world and the future with a more open mind. Like Wei Jia, the children of Chinese farmers have left their hometowns to pursue their dreams in the big city. The next stop, Picun, is where people from the countryside gather when they first arrive in the capital. Picun is adjacent to the Beijing International Airport, and a large number of low-income migrant workers who work in the capital city make their new home here. In his work, Hessler wrote about the decaying villages filled with left-behind old people and children. But now, parents are taking their children along when they move from the countryside to the city. Guo Guoguang and his son Guo Shibo are one such example. They're on their way to Shibo's summer school.
你爱跳街舞吗？啊？你爱跳街舞吗？跳起来什么感觉？
很爽的感觉。
很爽。
很爽，对。
对。
加慢，夹起手，上手，侧面放手臂。
This This is a special school for children of migrant workers. In China, migrant workers do not hold urban household registration or paperwork needed to show that they have permanent jobs and homes. As a result, they cannot enjoy the social benefits provided in the city, including the right to an education. So these schools in suburban Beijing are their only option.
他们跳得特别起劲哈。
啊，
是他自己选的这个班？
他自己选的，他自己报名学的。因为咱这个本身就是个公益机构，好多几乎99%都是打工子弟，他们本地人没有在这学校上学的。
都从哪来的打工子弟？
山南海北的都有，全国各地。
干的活呢？
就是低端人才，就是咱干精英的很少。
那你要是有个什么生病了或者是什么情况都怎么办呢？
自费。
都是自己解决。
自己解决。
那孩子也是。
孩子也是。
Since there are no secondary schools for children of migrant workers in Beijing, the only option is for the children to return to their hometown to attend school when they turn 13.
所以您之前的2个孩子都是到了初中就得回去了。
对，一上初中、上初一就得回老家了。
世博也是，他到时候也得回去。
对，他现在上3年级，开学就该上4年级，他2年也该回老家了。
他愿意吗？
他也不愿意。
他跟您说过不愿意回去吗？
说过，一说让回老家上学就掉脸子，就不高兴。
对他来说确实很难接受，因为他一出生就在这儿。
对，那但是你也只能回去。
手臂是2、2、3、4。
The conditions in these schools are a far cry from those of local public schools, but there are many volunteers who come here to tutor the children in the hope of exposing them to new experiences.
你要想到，他们其实就是在北京，他们不是在外地，他们是在1线城市，可是他们并没有能接触到最好的东西，所以他们其实也跟2、3线、4、5线城市是没有区别的。
对于他们来说，是一个看到外面世界的机会。
对。
您教这里的孩子跟教其他地方的孩子收费的来参加这个跳舞活动的孩子有什么不一样吗？感觉？
他们很享受这个过程，他们是觉得很快乐的一件事情，很轻松、很放松的一件事情。他们没有把这个当成是一种压力、一种负担。那可能市里面的孩子可能就不一样，因为他们这节课要学习舞蹈，下节课马上就要到小提琴了。
他们到初中都要回老家了。
对，所以我每次其实内心特别难受。
觉得他们能够通过教育去改变命运。
像咱们那个穷人，只能没有别的出路。你只能通过学习，通过上大学，然后才能走出农村。
Rich or poor, the Chinese believe deeply in the value of education, but the dividing lines in the education system are stark.
The facilities of this school are so basic. I can't believe we are still in Beijing. But for the migrant workers and their children, Beijing is their Chinese dream.
In Beijing, schools like this are disappearing. In recent years, migrant workers and their families have become casualties in a campaign to eliminate the so-called low-end population in the cities. It has become increasingly difficult for them to find their own community space in the cities. Also in Picun, Wang Dezhi runs the only unofficial museum of migrant workers in China. He hopes to give the migrant workers a voice.
中国有将近3亿的这种从农村进入城市的这个打工群体，3亿的人群很庞大，而且在我们中国的工业化城市过程当中也起了非常大的作用。但是我们其实很少有声音传出来，这个沉默的大多数可能就只有我们，所以我们想我们自己发出我们的声音。实际上，这农民工它是一个双重身份，又是农民又是工人。你是农民，那我在城里面我没有必要给你这个工人的福利。
您觉得这一代的新工人，那么他们其实有没有一个身份认同的问题？就是他们为这个城市做了很多贡献，那么他们有没有这个归属感？
对，
更严重是他们下一代
很难，
可能在这里出生，但是到某一个年龄都要回去。
这就是想象的，他不回去的，2代很难回去的，回不去。对他农村，他不是这个，他有2代之后啊，他不是简单的经济问题了， 是一个对城市的归属和认同问题了。他喜欢这儿的生活习惯了，一出门有商场，有各种专卖店，甚至有电影院。2代移民跟这个2代的工人跟第1代是完全不一样的。
您的梦想是什么呢？
我的梦想啊，就是希望工人，这也是我们机构的梦想，我们组织的梦想，就是让每一个劳动者能够有尊严的生活，尤其是我们城市的打工者在城市里面能够有尊严的生活。
When Hustler drove across northern China in the early 2000s, it was not difficult for him to foresee how prosperous the cities would become. But the countryside was a different story. China was going through the largest wave of rural-urban migration in human history. No one knew what would become of the countryside. Today, Zhou Yijun is joining Guo Guoguang and his son on their trip back to their hometown of Handan.
郭师傅，咱们这一路开了有多久了
？5个多小时吧。
5个多小时。那您这一年要回来几次啊？
一般的就是情况就是2次、3次。
春节。
对，春节。
暑假呀。
暑假，再一个就是国庆。
就有长假的时候。
对，出去打工的时候就是19嘛。
19岁。
啊。
对，你看你爸19岁离开家乡出去讨生活。就你回来一般都干嘛呀？这边，你在老家？
就玩会儿，然后睡会儿，就没什么可干的了。
没什么可干的了。你的小朋友都还在北京呢。
就一个朋友跟我玩。
你说在这儿，在老家？
啊。
哎，你跟我说说你们家大概在哪儿啊？
我们家？北京还有老家的。
这儿，在老家。哦，我说你们家，你还没有意识到我说哪个家是吗？您好，您好，您好，哎，您好，您好，您好，您好，您好，您是在干嘛呢？这是？
编着买钱。
编草帽是吧？
编草帽的买钱。
挺好，挺好。打扰了。
Here is a typical Chinese village. Everyone here is friendly and unpretentious. Every time he returns home, Guo Guoguang finds the respite that is missing from Beijing. The children here seem no different from their urban counterparts. But in a few years' time, will this confusion about their personal identity lead to greater uncertainty about their future? Where is home? Where will they belong? While Guo Shibo and children like him struggle to find a foothold in the city, how do the middle-class children who benefited from the reforms realize their dreams? The next stop on this trip along the Great Wall is Tianjin. Here, some 10-year-olds are headlining a rock and roll performance. The city of Tianjin was once northern China's largest financial and commercial center. It was also one of the first cities to open up to the outside world after the economic reforms. In his book, Peter Hessler wrote about how the rapid changes in China produced a personal void for many people. People no longer believe in the old communist ideas. At the same time, the speed of change made it difficult to focus on finding the right direction in life. But the rapid transformation of society seems to have led to something else, the awakening of self-consciousness. The children on this stage are pursuing their dreams freely at a very young age, and their dream is completely different from their parents' just a generation ago.
所以你们唱的歌是你们那个自己写的吗？
有一首是自己写的，梦想童年是自己做的。
你们大概那个词儿是想表达什么？
意思是，我们小时候有的梦想，将来肯定会实现。现在崇拜的人，有可能将来他们老了开始崇拜我们了。
你们能不能多说说你们都有什么梦想？
将来也是一个音乐家，能写歌，就是全能写歌，吉他、架子鼓、键盘、主唱，这些贝斯，对，还有贝斯，然后都通通全能都会，然后自己就是一个自己乐队，什么都能干。
你们对这个摇滚乐的就是这个文化会有了解吗？它起源是哪里？
它起源
在哪个国家？ 在中国，
中国摇滚崔健。
你们练摇滚每天大概有多少个小时？
我大概就一天最长时间12个小时，最短8个小时。
天哪，一天12个小时练音乐？
我就是遇上，假如说有比赛，然后你得科曲12小时。
那是因为你特别喜欢是吗？
These 10-year-olds' ambition to becoming rock stars may not be as far-fetched as it sounds. Certainly, the music school where they got their start believes in their promise.
Here is the headquarters of the largest rock music school in the world. Wow, I've never seen so many students playing drums in a classroom. So let's see how this school is producing young musicians in China.
所以咱们先把16分音符中音位的内容复习一遍。
In China, before the opening up and economic reforms, Western rock and roll music was banned by the authorities. 40 years on, rock music is being taught here using the Chinese-style collective method. Every child practices with the same textbooks, techniques, and songs. Teachers also follow the traditional modular teaching system. This seems different from the rock music most people know and understand.
我们很多说这个摇滚乐就是很叛逆、很反叛，你们是有这个感觉吗？
我不觉得爵士鼓是一种叛逆的一种表现形式，只是说它带给大家的是一种非常嗨、非常快乐的感觉，但内心是非常平静才能够把握住整个的节奏。不是说学鼓的人就是叛逆的人才去学的，任何的就是学所有的这些东西的，就是说他都会有叛逆期，然后如果真正处于这种叛逆期，他能够通过鼓或者是通过这种形式来表现出他内心的这种，对我觉得它是一种那个什么很好的一种途径。
我们看到一般教鼓都是那个1对1啊，那这儿就是大班上课，你觉得会有什么不一样吗？就这个方式好像就挺特别的。
对，我觉得这种团体课的话，反正鼓就是说这种那个齐鸣的感觉非常震撼。他这个团体课上的话，他会整个注重一个团体的感觉，比较放得开。
九拍集体课教学法呢，它分成好多的，就是我们所谓的游戏环节。比如这一个班10个小朋友在上课，我们会把这些孩子分成组，比如说有分组练习，每个组之间对抗，就是在1对1的课堂当中，其实是感受不到的。
刚开始推出这个就是这样一种教学方法的时候，也是有一些争议，有的人就觉得说，你这个好像是就是批量生产。
实践证明，我们通过集体课教学也培养出了一批一批的优秀的学员。其实美国孩子们对这个现代音乐的学习也是不够系统的。我们非常有信心把九拍的这套成功的教学模式，集体课教学模式，在美国进行推广，帮助更多美国及全球的孩子们在学习音乐的过程当中快速的取得成果。
The school is about to set up a branch in the United States, the birthplace of rock and roll. The export of the Chinese collective teaching method has begun. China is home to the world's largest network of roads, and the Great Wall runs parallel to some of these expressways. This is where Hessler passed through more than a decade ago, describing the declining countryside and the gradual disappearance of local village life. Fast forward a decade later, and the scene is quite different. In an age where social media and user-generated content is booming, so has the Chinese search for self-worth online. Brother Bao is one such grassroots celebrity.
宝哥，你看我今天专门穿着你这个粉丝必备的 T 恤衫来见你。您是在快手上有多少粉丝啊
？300多万。
你有300多万粉丝啊？我这个在微博上有20万粉丝都不好意思跟你对。
不敢。
大名人。
我啥不是名人。
您是哪一年开始玩快手的？
我是从2017年下半年。
你那个第一条发的什么呀？
是第一条是吃柚子的，我把柚子剥开吃柚子，我老婆给我录了一个，然后上热门了。
你会不会特别意外？就说你吃个柚子开个车，为什么这么多人看？
啊，对
，10万人呢。
那40多万点击量。
对啊。
然后从这开始，慢慢的我一天习惯了发作品了。当时我很惊讶，哎，我说这个行啊，还挺好玩。我说以后呢就坚持录吧，每天2个视频，有时候发3个，有时候赶忙的时候就不发。
你现在这个300万粉丝了，做这个名人感觉有压力吗？
没压力，什么压力啊？好多人找我打广告的，卖化妆品的，1个小时给我6万块钱，6万1个小时，给我6万。我一年我甚至能200-300万，很正常。我不接，我为嘛不接？因为化妆品咱不了解，你看看那人搓了有不瘦的，他搓脸，我去了是不是？我说这好那好，人们老铁是冲我的名声去买的。哎呀，宝哥时候他相信我呀，老铁们都很信任我，我说好他绝对好，他肯定是去买的。然后买了，以我的名义买了，买回来不行，是吧？人们不得骂我吗？
Despite having more than 3 million followers on Kuaishou, Wang Hongbao never thought of milking his fame. He knows what he is good at and wants his fans to love him for who he is.
那为什么你觉得大家那么喜欢你呢？
他们可能喜欢我的真实吧。
你看这人是在干嘛呢？
老铁啊，这是。
这你老铁在拍你啊，呵。
贺家，走了。
嚯！他一边开车一边在拍你，就说今天在路上碰见你了
啊，这多了，这有时候在服务区里还多，要上在服务区里还拿吓我一跳，我都不知道干啥的，拿手机。哎，宝哥，我媳妇每天看见，哎，你看我。
我是被你的影响力吓到了，真是。
你说，你看我之前那个最火的段子是吧？我播放量高达1237.5万。
天哪，这是最红的。
下了雨了，看鞋都脏了。
你可以这个扭的啊！对，您的梦想是什么呀？
我的梦想，希望以后卡车司机越来越团结，运费越来越高。但是，希望以后让我儿子跟女儿好好学习，让他长大了为国家做点事儿，不让他跑。虽然我跑车，我绝对不让我儿子去跑车的，因为跑车这行业现在危险性高，挣也挣不多。
If we prepare lunch in a car park, we run the risk of being surrounded by Mr. Bao's legion of fans. So he will have lunch on the side of the road instead. 每次做饭都得这么弯着切呀？
对啊。
不累呀？
累呗。
累。你那有时候得做好多人吃的呢。
好多人吃，大家伙一块帮忙干。
While Wang Hongbao prepares lunch, his wife is in charge of filming, editing, and posting the video online. These two never had any video production training, but now this has become a part of their daily routine. Even though it was a random truck stop, Wang Hongbao's fans were not far behind.
三哥什么时候开始粉他的
？1年多了。
干嘛会关注他？
喜欢吗？
山西专门过来啊？
啊。
那离这儿有多远呢
？500多公里。
你专门过来见他，看看宝哥。
我俩跑车。
你是什么时候开始用互联网的？开始有网络？17年。就是你是直接在手机上上网的，对吧？就你没有过那个阶段，就是电脑啊上网，直接就是用手机。
对。
那个可能你们周围的人大部分都是直接开始用手机上网，然后就知道了有快手啊什么这些。
Kuaishou is one of China's biggest video sharing platforms. It's also where grassroots internet celebrities like Brother Bao first became household names. What does this say about Chinese society today? Perhaps the people at Kuaishou can provide some answers.
这边请，这是我们快手的一个接待大厅。 对，现在大屏幕展示的是我们的一些用户的直播和短视频。
我想问你们现在大概用户是多少？
我们现在中国是有2亿的日活，就是每日活跃的用户。
2亿
？2亿。
那能产生多少视频啊？
我们每天上传的视频是1500万条上传到平台上。对，而且如果你把每天所有用户观看的时间加起来，这个数据是很有意思，非常惊人，一共是2万年。
What？
一天
你们要看到2万年的？
对，所有观看时长加起来是2万年。
我就是知道你们特别大，然后特别活跃。我看上面所有的人，让我就觉得充满了活力，每个人都很多东西要表达。那你觉得这种中国人的这种强烈的表达欲望也是特别的吗？
我觉得其实很多中国过去90%以上的人口是没有渠道去表达自己的，那有了快手像快手这样短视频和直播平台之后，它的门槛是非常低的。短视频这种形态是非常简单的，你只需要拿起来，然后按一个按钮，拍一个30秒的视频，你甚至不用说太多的解释。像宝哥，比如说几百万粉丝，在这个过去，中国是非常难以想象的。
你们希望别人看到的价值观是什么？
我们的理念是普惠，希望每个人的真实的生活都能被看到。我们不会去定义什么是美好，而是让大家都呈现出来，大家可以去选择自己喜欢的内容。对，这就是我们那个办公区。然后我们在北京总部大概有4-5千人。
4-5千人？
对，
你们规模很大。
对，非常大。然后其中60%以上都是工程师、码农、小哥哥。
所以你们其实是一家科技公司。
对，我们是一家科技公司，大数据和 AI 支持的公司。
哇哦！所以你们表面上是在看到很多，就是说山村的这个大爷做一些 low tech 非常低科技的炒菜、卖山货，但背后支持都是你们这个 high tech 是吧？都是高科技的背后支持。
对，是一家很魔幻的公司。这就是我们的其中的一个草根的网红，他们其实是一个团队，大概5个人，可以看到现在有400多万粉丝。
每个人都有展现生活的欲望吗？
是的，因为其实很多人他们的生活在自己看来，当你在不断重复一件事情的时候，你会觉得非常的枯燥。但是他们用快手分享自己的生活的时候，发现，他们自己觉得再平常不过的生活，在别人眼里是非常的有趣，非常的新奇。那快手就变成一个连结。
我觉得它让我看到了有完全不同的中国和完全不同的中国人。可能过去在传统媒体上，中国和中国人的样子相对来说是比较单一的，然后这一下子会让你看到，哇，还有那么多我不知道的部分。
Technology has broken down the walls between the cities and the countryside. Maybe this is the biggest change the internet has brought to the lives and dreams of ordinary Chinese. The journey ends in Ordos in Inner Mongolia, also one of the last places Peter Hessler visited on his journey along the Great Wall. After the founding of the People's Republic of China, the government encouraged large numbers of people to move out of the Great Wall area to settle down in the unpopulated outer areas. Decades later, Ordos has become one of the richest cities in China, far exceeding the per capita GDP of Beijing and Shanghai. Its wealth comes from the abundant energy resources found here. But the Chinese people are beginning to think more and more about the non-material side of life. Here, in the wealthy city of Ordos, how would people define happiness? When it comes to happiness, love and family are the starting points for many Chinese. Today is Qixi, also known as Chinese Valentine's Day, and a special event is currently taking place.
This may look like a variety show, but this spectacle is actually a government-organized speed dating event.
Owing to the favorable living environment, Ordos ranks among the happiest cities in China.
就是咱们这个地方，这个耳朵斯这边整个是幸福感非常高的地方，年轻人还比较愿意留在当地。
对， 然后现在随着咱们这个经济的发展了，然后想把一部分年轻人才留下来，
帮他们找对象的形式，
对，然后
让他们在这儿结婚，
对，让他们在这儿落户、结婚、生子，这样他就肯定定在这儿了，不可能再走了。
哦，我第一次知道这样的活动是由共青团来组织的嘛。我原来想象当中，共青团是跟党中央、党组织下面的组织，
就是
对，你们怎么会管到这种后面的问题？
共青团就是党的助手和后备军，他是这样评价我们的。然后现在为什么要开展这些活动？因为这个青年人的思想还有青年人的一些需求，他们在不断的进步，然后我们也在不断的摸索，他们最需要什么，然后我们去解决什么问题。
Due to an imbalanced population ratio, the Chinese government changed the decades-long one-child policy to allow for 2 children per family in 2016. But birth rates have continued to plummet. Despite living in one of the most prosperous cities in China, the young people here still face relationship pressure.
为什么现在在中国这个青年男女还是找对象那么困难呢？
这可能有几个原因吧。一个方面是这个性别结构失衡的问题，性别结构从80年到2010年呢，中国出生的男性比女性多出了3000多万。
哦，就是男孩子多，
男孩子比女孩子多出3000多万，
哦，这么多，
这30年之间啊。当然了，这里面也有，即使在正常情况下，男孩也会比女孩多，但是这3000多万里面呢，其中有2000万是由于可能是由于性别选择等等原因造成的。
整整有1代人或者2代人都处于这种性别失衡的状况。
对，性别失衡的状态啊。所以当前来说，这个成年段这一个适婚年龄的男性就比女性多了不少啊。这是从性别结构上。从年龄结构上来说呢，中国这个年龄结构也处在这个加速老龄化这个阶段。我们国家这个老年人口数量太庞大了，因为我们14亿人口占全世界76亿人口将近20%。我们老年人65岁及以上老年人有1亿2千万，1亿2千万就抵得上日本整个国家的人口了。老年人数量太庞大了。
A low birth rate coupled with an aging society means the large population advantage is also disappearing. With that, the pace of development will no doubt slow down. No wonder the local government is organizing events like this to encourage the young people to meet.
你们今天有收获吗？
感觉还不错，就是人挺多的，然后就是各种活动都弄得挺满意的。
有没有找到你想找的？
没有。
没有啊？
没有。
好，那你们呢？
没有。
你也没有找到，你呢？你也没有。
没有。
主
要没有人过来加我们，我们就坐在那儿等，没人加我们。主动啊！
是什么？你们那个微信
小哥哥都怎么了？是啊。
有点腼腆。
对，太腼腆了。
那除了这个活动以外，平时生活当中和工作当中，你们觉得现在容易找对象吗？
像我在一个国企上班，然后就在打企那个荣兴化工，然后女的少，关键是女的少。
你们觉得像你们这样就是年纪的人，你们的梦想是什么？
梦想，我目前最大的梦想，也是我爸我妈最大的梦想，就是找到对的人，赶紧嫁了吧。
你有没有给自己一个这个时间表？
这个我并没有给自己定固定的时间，就是缘分到了的时候，我会抓住它。
In the world's most populous country, marriage has become one of the main concerns for the government. Even in this prosperous city, happiness is not a given. Economic development has changed the mindsets and attitudes of ordinary Chinese. Everyone is still chasing after a better life. But there is also more reflection about society and country. Even as the Chinese dream continues to take shape on the national level, ordinary Chinese will add their own aspirations to their very own Chinese dream.